Today I want to talk about climate control solutions for your investment property on today's Quick Investing Tip. Hi there, Ryan Black, real estate investor and lifestyle architect. In today's Quick Investing Tip, I want to chat a little bit about different climate control solutions, their pros and cons, so that you can consider them for your project. Now, this would apply both for long-term or short-term transactions. It doesn't matter. It's just important that you understand what kind of options are out there. So first off, we'll go with, I guess, the most obvious one, which is that of central HVAC, right? Heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Probably the most common in both in commercial applications as well as residential, where you've got you've got your air handler and you've got a heating unit, a furnace, and air conditioning unit. You've got the supply lines that go out to the different areas of the house, and then you've got the return lines that bring it back to to cycle the air and treat the air throughout the house. Now, this is very common, and you probably have that in your house. One thing that we see here in Utah is there are a lot of homes that have central heat but not central air. So adding the central air conditioning is not too hard, right? It's an evaporator and a condenser, and for a reasonable amount of money, we can add that in and retrofit a system so that it has not only heating but also the air conditioning. Some of the disadvantages of a central HVAC system is that because it's moving the air, if you have occupants who are have allergies or sensitivities to dust or other things, that can kind of aggravate them a little bit. Also, if you live in an area that's really dry, the system can dry out the air even more and cause it to be very, very dry inside the house. If you live in a humid area, then that's a good thing, right? You're able to dehumidify inside the house, but that can be another challenge. Overall, it is, I would say, the most common system that we come across. We have had some properties where we have simply been unable to retrofit the system, or it didn't even have a system. There was no ducting at all, so we had to do a full install of everything. Obviously, that's a little more expensive, but overall, a central HVAC system, assuming you're not getting into the crazy, high-end stuff, but what we put in is just standard, right? Standard grade stuff. It is very economical, it works great, and more than anything, it's what people expect to see when they're purchasing a property, right? They want to say, okay, does it have central heat? Does it have central air? So it's kind of the most common one that we see, and that's our go-to system. But there are other options. One that we will see more on higher-end homes is that of radiant heated floors. And so this is where underneath the flooring, you have a series of tubes that pump heated water through those tubes. And so as that heated water goes through, that emanates the heat and radiates up through the floor, which is particularly nice if you have like tile, right, or some other type of stone floor that is cold. It warms your toes, so your toes aren't cold in the winter. And so that's a nice, it's a little more expensive to do something like that. The good thing is it's silent and it does not move up the air at all. If you're concerned about having the air blowing, and that can be a great option as well, the radiant heat flooring. We've also seen, now this is not really common anymore, but radiant ceilings. And obviously it doesn't make sense because heat rises, so why would you emanate the heat from the ceiling expecting it to come down? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I'm guessing that's probably why people don't do it anymore. But we have seen, and we've even seen heated electric ceilings where there was a series of mesh wire through the ceiling that then, when you turn on the thermostat, would heat up the ceiling and heat up the room. So not the most efficient way, not very common. I don't even think people do it anymore, but we have seen it. It is out there. But the heated flooring can be a great option. Along the radiant heating line, one that is common that we do see, especially in basements or in older homes, is that of baseboard radiant heating, right? So you got the 240 volt line coming in for the electrical heater, and it's simply an electric heater on the baseboard that warms up the room, warms up the wall. Once again, they typically don't have blowers, so there's no air moving around. It simply just heats up the room. They work well, especially if you have one that's efficient. They do work well. The disadvantage is don't touch the heater. You'll burn yourself, and you can't put furniture right next to it, right? Because it's a fire hazard or curtains and things like that. So there are some other, like I wouldn't want to have radiant heaters in my rental property because I would be concerned that the tenants would injure themselves or start a fire. That's just me personally. But there is that option. The other one that's kind of along that is traditional oil or steam radiator heaters. We don't really see those much here in Utah. Once in a while, they're not very common. They're much more common in other areas of the country where you have the actual radiators and you have a boiler right down under the building or in the basement that is either heating oil or water, and through steam or oil, it circulates that the heated liquid, and then it radiates the heat off of the radiator units that are located throughout the house. Once again, those systems are still in use today. There are companies who will service them. So if you have a property that has that type of setup, I would say get a professional in there, have them take a look at it and see the condition of it. Because if it's working well, then you might be able to just hang on to it or give it a tune-up and not have to worry about ripping it out. Some of the older systems can have issues with leaking. Then you get damage in the walls and ceilings, right? Pressure issues, or if they can get clogged, then get sediment that builds up inside the pipes. There's a lot of potential issues that you can have with those types of systems. But if they're working well, they work well. They work great, and they're simply radiant heating. They're used a lot in Europe. We see those a lot in the European countries. So anyways, that's another option. And one of the other common ones that we see here in Utah, especially because it's so dry here, are swamp coolers, right? So if you are wanting to cool down the space, swamp coolers, and those are stored up on the roof, got a big duct coming down, and it's simply where it sucks in the air from outside, and then it lets the water drip down over the inside of the cooler, and as the water passes, or as the air rather passes through the filter, picks up the water droplets and cools down the air. So you get basically one area of the house, typically the hallway, that has this like frigid air being blasted down through it, and then that kind of dissipates out to the rest of the house. Not very effective for cooling down the whole house. Typically they're pretty noisy. They add humidity, so that's a good thing if you're in a dry area and you want to add humidity into the building because it's so dry, which can be nice. Obviously, in a humid area, you would never use a swamp cooler. That would be disastrous. But you can get issues with mold and fungus and things like that. Leaking issues with the swamp cooler leaking, or the drain on the roof, staining your roof. There are different challenges. Typically, with what we do, we get rid of a swamp cooler. We get a property, the swamp cooler goes, we cap it, we're done. We don't want to deal with swamp coolers. Most people want central AC anyways. But it's still out there, so I wanted to bring it up. And last but not least, this is one of my favorites, are the ductless AC and heat pump systems. Now these are they've been around for a while, but they're getting more popular. And that is where if you have a house and you want to have separate zone control in different areas, you can basically get the fan, and then it has a linkage to all the unit that's outside that gives you both air conditioning as well as a heat pump. So you can control, you can have, it's basically a single unit outside, and then it route the lines to the different wall units that go in different areas of the house. You might have in the living room, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, but you can have separate zoned control of each area, and it's controlled all by one single unit. So you don't have to worry about running, duct lines. The property you might not be able to retrofit it with ducting. It just might not be feasible. That can be one thing you could look at, is simply getting a ductless, AC heat pump setup, and then you have the individual units in each room that service each area. And then you get zone control as well, which is nice and a little more energy efficient. So those are a few of the kind of the top ones I want to share with you. There are so many different options, and in your area where you live, there might be different regulations of what's allowed and what's not. So I would just remind you that real estate investing is a team sport. It is not an individual sport. It's a team sport. So make sure that on your team, you have a professional that, or at least one, that is an HVAC professional that you can refer to and find out, what's hot in your area, different prices, understand what's going on, so that when you come to a property, or if it's property you already own, you can figure out what the best option is. You don't need to do it on your own. I'm not an HVAC professional. We have ones that we work with, and we've gone through so many properties at this point that we've learned what the different options are that are out there, which is why I wanted to share it with you. So thanks for joining me today. If you're interested in active or passive real estate investing, please reach out to me. I'd love to chat and see if we can get you started on your own journey. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.